the Dossier Project. This is a little bit of a sidebar conversation. And we've been talking, obviously right now there's still an active case going on with the civil suit. And Danielle, you're a part of that. And we've obviously all been following along. And recently, there's actually been an update that I haven't personally seen any reportings on, but saw the filing that Nicki was dismissed from the civil suit as a defendant, which is, I'd say, a pretty big deal. And typically, there's usually some reporting, even if it's very brief, but I've seen nothing. I don't know about you two. So we're reporting on it and just bringing that to light. And I don't know, if this is typical or how these things work, but I thought it'd be great for us to just have a smaller side conversation about, I don't know how this affects you, Danielle, in any way, and as a defendant still in the case. But maybe you can just kind of talk about if that does affect you in some way and what that was like for you to receive that news, because I know this has been something that you guys have been pushing on together and working really closely on together.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, there's three of the defendants, myself, Brandon Porter, and Nicki Clyne, are pro se litigants. So we're representing ourselves in the civil suit, the RICO civil suit. I mean, one of the most direct implications is that, in the order that when that announced that Nicki was being dismissed from the RICO civil suit, it also said that that means if she's being dismissed from it, that any of her filings up to this point won't be considered. So that's a very direct implication. Typically the arguments that you use as defendants in that case, you can reference each other's arguments and things like that. And often, the voices are heard somewhat together in that way. So those will no longer be able to be referenced or utilized by the judge. I mean, other than that, obviously, us being together and being able to morally support each other in this way and what we were doing was also obviously very valuable and meant a lot to me. So there are the more personal implications, but I think legally that's the most direct one.
Yeah. So with her not being able to, like, were there things that she shared that she filed previously before that would be helpful to you that are now no longer going to be considered? Because I know, like, Nicki was a very big player, I guess, and very vocal, in her advocacy of bringing to highlight how a lot of the points that were brought forward in the case have no base. Um, is there anything that she has shared before that can no longer be considered that are kind of a downside for you and what you're in the, I guess, weakening the strength of the collective push in the case for you guys?
I mean, I definitely think that's the case. Nicki was a first line member in DOS. She was one of the women who created the whole organization and carried with her a big why, like a big meaningful, purposeful reason why DOS came to exist. And I mean, I think she was a very strong defendant. I think she was logically very sound. I think she created multiple, many arguments that pointed out the inconsistencies of the plaintiffs. From the fact that Sarah Edmondson's the one who invited her into ESP and into all of the organization. And now she's the one suing Nicki Clyne in a very illogical role reversal. But there were many arguments like that I think were very logical, and Nicki played a key role in being able to expose the inconsistencies, really the inconsistencies in the arguments that the defendants are that the plaintiffs are putting forth. So I think it is a big loss. And I think there's other much bigger implications for our legal system. For the just the fact that she was able to drop off or be dismissed in the way that she was. But yes, for me personally, I think she was a very strong she was a very strong key player in being able to expose a lot of the nonsense that's going on.
Yeah. Linda, when you saw that Nicki was dismissed from the case, what were your thoughts? And is this, I know you're not here as our lawyer, but is this
definitely not?
never, but is this typical, or do you know how these kinds of things come to pass? I know we don't know the details in this situation, but I think we've already seen a lot of things that are not really typical. So I'm just wondering, is this just another one of those things?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, I was a lawyer, but I was a corporate lawyer. So really, understanding how the court system and litigation works and stuff, I can't really speak to, but one of the, first thoughts I had was, even when Fash wind up, back, I don't know, when do you remember what month it was that Nicki had, kind of changed her story? It was like,
It's the end of March.
End of March. Oh, wow. It's been that long. Okay. And it's always interesting to understand why that decision. And then, hypothesizing really, it's like, not having known, what Nicki was actually thinking or saying, but one of the looking at the facts in her life, that are, public, that she was being sued. And, one of the reasons that obvious things is, that if she changed her story or changed her stance, changed her perspective on Das, Keith, etc., one of the very likely effects would have been, a dismissal or so forth. So I was not really surprised that it did happen, eventually, because I think that was one of the key things that was still affecting her, being a defendant in the case. And it's also just interesting because just evaluating, it's like, what is the point of a civil suit? She was never charged criminally for anything, and then it's like civil suit is really about seeking damages, and arguable, like how did, won't get into the whole thing, but it's one of the first thoughts that came up for me was just kind of like, all right, well, whatever happened, okay? And just because Nicki changed her view or her opinion, her subjective opinion, does not erase or undo anything that happened, whether it was criminal or justifying a civil thing. Kind of doesn't matter. It's just, in reality, logically, you can't go back and undo things, or, as much as, it's just reality, right? So the fact that she was, the plaintiffs dismissed, I think, without prejudice, meaning like they can still do it. It's not like forever, that they have still a way, if she maybe changes her mind again, say, they can still, resue her. But it's just interesting. It just begs the question of like, okay, well, why were they suing then? So it's as if, okay, well, now that you've changed your view and you agree with us, we're not going to sue you because now you're validating our opinion, our stance, and you're one of us. So it's just, that's what it just makes it seem very obvious, because that's kind of like, is that what we're really using our legal system for? Just to be like, okay, right, wrong, agree with us or not, and we get you to change your view on it. That's winning in our case, and so we don't need to sue you anymore. And it's really more trying to use the legal system as a thought or mental kind of punishment. So, and is that really what we're, spending, how long, how much money, taxpayers' dollars, and so forth? It's ridiculous, in my opinion. Just that process, and not, just from what happened, so
right.
That's my view.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought too, was if they're suing based on, they made certain claims about wrongdoing, in their opinion that she did, and the past didn't change, why is a change in her opinion now grounds for that didn't happen? Because I don't know much about civil processes either, but that was my first thought. And it
You don't get to
seems like it,
redo or undo or anything. Like what
right.
happened, it's either there were damages or not, or there were, grounds for things or not. And it's not based on subjective opinion, so,
Right.
like that. And really, if there's any merit to what they said, it's like, why would they back off?
Right. Which also
Right.
begs the questions of the other defendants who have been dismissed. It's not like Nicki's the
Right.
first one to be dismissed, but this is a very obvious pattern to look at. But now if you look at, Nancy Salzman, and you look at some of the other defendants that have been dismissed after HBO came out, or after they publicly changed their view in a certain way, it's very interesting how we can just dismiss the consequences in a legal suit when the behaviors haven't been addressed. So
Yeah, it seems from a strategy perspective, and again, everything has been not typical, I think, in the criminal case and the civil case, but it seems like it would kind of weaken the whole case overall if you're just saying, well, now you speak our language, now you're singing our tune, you're good. And that's kind of been my issue from the jump, is that it hasn't been a truth-seeking mission so much as it's been like, I'm going to accuse you of following this person and being blind in your faith, but just do what I say what I think you should say, and you're good. Like, that has really been the crux, I think, of this from the beginning. And I'm wondering, like, Danielle, like, is that, without going into the details of where you guys are moving forward now, like, do you think this could potentially help with some of what you're pushing now in the final stretches of this, as it's, because it's kind of starting to come to a close at this point, right, in your process?
the first the first part of this hearing is in terms of we've submitted our motions to dismiss, and the judge will be making a determination on whether or not he believes the charges should be dismissed for each of us individually or as a collective. I think, I personally think this does illuminate the lack of integrity in the process. Like, why are they suing me? If their strategy is just to go after people who are speaking against their narrative, if I'm one of the people that's left to shine light on the lies, or kind of poke holes in their logic, then it I think it really does make sense that they would go after me in that way. And I've also gotten messages from people close to us that said, well, you might be able to kind of change your mind the way that others did, and that's interesting to me. Like, well, what would I have to do? Do I just call the,
Maybe you should consider it, Danielle. I think you should consider it. Just do it. Just do the same, just, you know what, just say it, and then be dismissed, and then just
My
let it
bad.
do.
I just woke up.
Just say what they want to hear, pick your battles, just say it, be dismissed.
Like, the funny thing is that the people offering this suggestion think that they've had to compromise nothing in order to be able to just get out of the civil suit. Like, oh, well, you could probably do the same thing. Just call them up. What, do I just make an application? Do I just say, hey, can I get out too? Is that okay? What would I have to do in
It
order
could be like the movie when Harry Met Sally. I'll have what she's having.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think then it would be obvious what they've compromised in order to get out. Because if I call them up and say, hey, can I get out? What would I need to do? I think there would be some things that they'd want me to do in order for them to drop me. But I could be wrong.
I think it's worth asking, Danielle. Like joking, not joking, but just really, I mean, it's just to bring to light.
Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting experiment, if nothing else, to see what happens and what it takes, because I don't know how this came to be, but obviously there's a process and it's possible. Whether you want to take on those agreements that would need to happen to do that, that's another thing. But I think it does really kind of show, I think, an even greater light how this is really not based on so much of the facts of the situation, but just about, if you're on our team now, then you're good and you're in the safe zone. So that's whether you want to take that on, that's a whole other thing. But I think it seems the judge in this case has been pretty fair, and I've liked some of the assessments that he's made so far. So I trust that he'll, do what he can with what he has right now, and that you and Brandon and the other defendants will be able to, push this through. But thank you both for your time today. I know it's a short one, but wanted to just make sure that people were at least aware what happened, and we'll continue to follow along.
Awesome. Great.
Awesome. Thanks, ladies.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.